Amar, welcome to the Conceive, Believe, and Achieve podcast. Well, you know who I am. We just had a conversation off camera there. I'm kind of excited to have this conversation because we talked about prior to this and doing some research about your past or about who you are. I've learned some things about you that are kind of parallel with it that happened in my life. My father was an Olympic wrestler. My father basically I like to say forced me into it because I didn't really learn how to skate. I didn't learn how to do anything else
Yeah,
except wrestle. I mean, I can skate, but I just can't stop. But I want to talk to you about, of course, let's talk about your beginnings because I'm sure there's similarities in the two of our wrestling careers.
oh, for sure. You just nailed it. But thank you for having me, of course. But yeah, like we were talking about off camera, we have so much in common. It's super cool. Like you said, your dad wrestled. My dad didn't go to the Olympics or anything, but he had dreams too, and it was something that we were. He kind of put his dreams on us as young kids. But I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful that he pushed me. Like you said, I don't know how to skate either. I can barely ride a bike right now. So, um, uh, but no, yeah, it was kind of a traditional family tradition to wrestle in our family. But it was amazing. I mean, I'm grateful for them to push me towards the sport. And yeah, like I started when I was 5 or 6. Most people say back home that they kind of grew up on the mat. It's a funny story. When I was born, my dad was actually at a wrestling tournament. He was hosting a wrestling tournament. So then he came after the tournament. So my mom always bugs him on that. But yeah, that's just how important wrestling is to us and in our family. So all my siblings wrestled, what my cousins did. It was just our path. Yeah.
So kind of no choice, right? Just like myself, zero choice, a lot of influence, and I'm sure if you did something else, your parents would be proud, but must have been so happy when you chose the sport of wrestling.
Yeah, it was either become a doctor or study like a doctor at the age of 7 or wrestle. That's what it was. I remember I've in my life I've quit wrestling tons of times. I can't count how many times I've quit wrestling, but I've always come back within a week. But as a kid, I remember one time I quit, and I was like, some other kid at practice like put me in a weird situation. I hurt my back, and I started crying for like 7 or 8. And then after I went back home, and I was like, Dad, I'm done. I'm not wrestling anymore. He's like, okay. He's like, if you don't want to do that, he's like, you're gonna study. I'm like, I'm in elementary school. Like, what do you want me to study? He's like, you're gonna write me paragraphs, just stories, essays on like random topics he would give me, and he'd shut the door in my room. I would sit there for 2 hours while he'd be at practice. He'd come back, read the story. Next day we do the same. By the third day, I was back on the mat. So
Well, he was going to create a champion some way or another, whether it
yeah,
was in
exactly.
literary field or wrestling. That's awesome. I like that. I'm guessing, that was his fatherly ploy to keep you in wrestling.
Yeah, yeah,
He
I
really
guess.
wanted you to stay with something, but
Yeah.
awesome. Um, you know, how has been the support at home? I'm assuming it's great, but you are. Let's talk about this first because we haven't told the listeners that in the intro I did. But you are an Olympian. You were at the Olympic Games in 2020, right?
Yeah,
At
correct.
Tokyo.
Yeah,
You just qualified for the current Olympic Games, the 2024 Olympic Games.
yeah,
Um, what has the support been like at home?
yeah. Tremendous support. Like from 2020, like my goals in my life were my first Olympics. I wanted them to be the 2016 Olympics. Sadly, that didn't happen. I lost the trials in the finals. So then I knew that I was going for sure for another quad. And then I made the 2020 ones, and then COVID happened. And then we looked at it and we're like, okay, the next Olympics only 3 years away. Like, why not? Let's just keep going. But those 3 years was a hard time to keep myself in the sport just because I wanted to do other things in my life as well. Just because wrestling in Canada, it's really tough just because like financially it's not possible, right? So it's here I am. I want to start my life. I want to want to put some money in my pocket. I want to find a wife. Like, I want to start my life in that sense. I gave wrestling everything. So then in those 3 years, I'm grateful that I had my family's support and Ohio RTC's support that they I was able to continue wrestling. And then I took some time away from the sport Became a police officer for Vancouver, did my academy time, and then took 10 months off to go back to wrestling. But family sports is what keeps me going, of course.
Awesome. And again, another thing that we found out prior to recording that we're both police officers, and I had no idea, to tell you the truth, until we had that conversation. So, you talked about you just spoke about being training down in the U.S. and that's one of the things that I don't think has changed over the years. Because my dad wrestled at Oklahoma State, as I told you, and one of the reasons why he went down to the U.S. was one, financially, it was hard to find training partners. One, his size, but two,
Yeah.
financially, there wasn't a lot of support for the sport of wrestling. So I guess we're currently still finding that problem.
Oh, for sure.
But also there's better training partners down there when it comes to especially the heavier weights, because my dad had Chris Taylor. I don't know if you remember that fellow, 300, well, he's 450 pounds. But you down in Ohio have some pretty tough characters in your wrestling room.
Yeah. It's the same story. That's what kind of led me to the States. I didn't know I was going to go to post-secondary. So when I got a scholarship to Oregon State, I jumped on that. And then I spent five and a half years down there. After that, I moved to Ohio with Ohio RTC, spent 4 years here. So in that time, I've learned a lot. And I've had some amazing partners, amazing coaches. The difference is really like the level of coaching. Not that I want to take away from anything that we have back home, because we do have tremendous coaches, but just the level of, if we're talking real talk, like, it makes sense. These coaches are getting paid over 100 grand to do their job, 150 grand, 200 grand. Like, that's what the US offers, more than that. So they take their job very, very seriously. So they're on us, everything we need. And it's just a system that's been built for decades and decades. So training partner wise, US is one of the best countries in wrestling, right? And there's no doubt about it. So I've always said I wish Canada back in the day just followed the blueprints. We got some blueprints. The country right beside us is doing amazing. Let's just follow everything they're doing.
Yeah, I talked to Chris Woodcroft, who's our high performance manager. I think that's his title.
Yeah.
We did talk about it, and he definitely said we need to get our kids down back in the U.S. and train in the U.S. And that's exactly what was going on. Tell you the truth, let's go to you talk about Oregon State. I was watching, or before the Olympic trials, when you first went to the Olympic trials, you ended up wrestling. It was Corey Jarvis, right?
Yeah, 2016.
Before that even happened, and when I realized, when I started to hear your name and saw that you had taken third at the NC2A championships, which is a prestigious tournament in the U.S. Anybody that knows wrestling knows that is probably one of the toughest tournaments in the world. When I heard that, I knew Corey was in trouble. And I like Corey, I really do, but I knew that was, he probably didn't have a chance. And I'll say it, but when I watched the match between the two of you, it was almost like night and day.
Yeah. I think from 2016, I grew up. I grew more mature. It just, like you said, it was night and day, and I felt it on the mat as well. Back to Corey, obviously, he beat me in 2016, and he went to the Olympics, and he did a great job. So it's tremendous for Canada and Canada's wrestling. But yeah, I knew my time was well overdue. So.
So let's talk about Oregon State. The training, adjusting from freestyle to collegiate. I can give a little insight myself too, but let's hear about how you handled it.
Yeah, it was, as a kid, I grew up wrestling in the States a lot. My dad took us down to Washington and Oregon like every other weekend to wrestle these small tournaments. And we didn't know a lot about folk style. All we said was take them down and then don't get taken down or you're not getting up. So that was, like, as a kid, that was what we learned. We didn't really know much technique, but we knew how to wrestle. So, and wrestling's wrestling at the end of the day. I understood that later on in my life. But as I got to college, like NCAA Div 1, like, that was tremendously different than wrestling as kids, obviously. I knew I had to wrestle against guys who knew how to ride, like Tony Nelson and some of these other guys, the bigger guys like Adam Kuhn. Like, these guys knew how to ride on top really well. So it was I had to be more strategic in the way I wrestled. I couldn't just shoot off shots. I couldn't just let myself go just because I I didn't want to get underneath them. I remember a time when I wrestled Tony Nelson for my first time, and I took a shot. He goes, spins behind me, and I'm on the mat with my face on the mat for like 2 minutes and 30 seconds, and my wrists are like all curled up. And I remember I got off the mat after I got up after, and I was like, what just happened to my forearms? They were shot. Like everything was like my arms were just exploded. And but yeah, it was a hard transition. But my coaches did a great job. We worked a lot. My second year was a lot better. I do wish I redshirted my freshman year. I think that would have been a big benefit for my wrestling. But I knew our team needed me to step in right off the bat, so that's the decision we made at that time.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a tough transition. You're talking about your dad taking you down to the U.S. and putting you in tournaments. Same thing. My dad took us down to Ohio. He took us down to Oklahoma. He would take a bunch of provincial wrestlers. Like he took Woodcroft and his brother down to Arizona. I mean, we just wrestled. It didn't matter. And then the same thing where you're saying, just go in and wrestle, and then you get taken down and you're getting ridden and you don't know what the hell's going on. But, my dad was just take him down and you won't have that problem. Okay.
It's easy enough to say. It's really hard to do.
But I mean, it opened your eyes, and it opened my eyes to the aggressive nature of U.S. wrestling. I think I find myself, and this was my opinion, that I think Canadian wrestlers aren't as aggressive as U.S. wrestlers are. They tend to have a little more, I guess, fire in their belly, and they just don't let up. I mean, it's constantly on the attack.
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that. I think wrestling in Canada, we try to adapt our style to international wrestling, which is kind of a slower pace, which has been a slower pace in the past, but now it's a much faster pace. But I feel like our wrestlers try to be more slick and in that way. But in US, everyone's a grinder, right? We grind through matches really hard. We have heavy paces, lots of shots off the point. Everyone wants to score points. In Canada, I think that's something that we lack a little bit. We're trying to be a little more strategic than telling our young wrestlers to just go out there and fight really, really hard. But there's lots of guys that still do in Canada. We do have some amazing wrestlers. Where we fail, I think, is just after high school. After high school, we just don't have a system in place. Like I know from our team in BC, like my brother guys and guys before me, like we were beating a lot of the US guys. Like in high school, we were doing really, really well with these guys. And then where we would fall off is once we graduate high school, there's just our college system is not up to par anywhere close to where their peers is in the US. So it is what it is.
Yeah, there's a lot more colleges, and I think that we give the typical excuses. Oh, there's just more of a population down there. It's not the case. It's a different style of training. One. Because I can tell you from, again, and I'm sure this was probably similar thought process, as you go down as a freestyle wrestler and then you get the crap beat out of you and you're like, what the heck happened? I remember in the wrestling room when I was down in Michigan, Steve Frazier, I don't know if you know that name, but he was a gold medalist for the US in 1984. I didn't know who he was. He walked into our wrestling room and he was 38 years old at the time. And he proceeded to beat the crap out of me. And 38 years old, I'm 21. I'm like, what's going on? I catch him in a throw, which pissed him off. So he came at me harder. And I got up kind of just relaxed, relaxed. Okay, typical freestyle wrestler.
Yeah.
He was back in my face like he wanted to eat supper. Like he was hungry. I hit him again with another throw, caught him with that. And then the beating got so much worse. I spent an hour. He wouldn't let me go. I was sucking wind. I was trying to get away from him. He would pull me back onto the mat. And I was tired. I was like, I was sucking wind. Like I could not breathe, but he proceeded to beat the crap out of me. And my coach just laughed at me. Willie Gadsnews passed on, but he just laughed and he goes, "Dude, just got your ass handed to you by an Olympic champion, buddy." What? Who's this? I wouldn't have even wrestled him if I knew that.
But that's the difference. That's the difference in the States. Like here we have in the States, we don't know. There's countless numbers of Olympic champs and world champs and medalists. In Canada, we don't have that. The only time I've seen guys are like Gia Sasuri and Daniel Galli would pop around, maybe do a camp once in a while. But other than that, like we didn't have people to look up to in that sense and try to follow their path, just because there was no path created at that time. Just because we don't have the sheer numbers of that.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of people to look up to, let's talk about who you look up to in the sport of wrestling or looked up to and currently, and have you met them since you've progressed?
Yeah, I have. Fortunately in my life, yeah. As a kid growing up, like I looked up to. We have a kids club back home called Costa Wrestling Club. Dad started up in 1976. So in that, I had a lot of people that are captains of our team and just people that I generally want to be and want to be like one day. And those guys were like Fido Sahota, Goody Pisa, Money Sandu. These are the type of guys that were my idols and the guys that like who kicked my ass. To got to me, it's really funny. Like a month ago, I was back home and I was talking to my dad, and he's like, look how lucky you've been. Like you got your ass kicked so much in your life as a kid, like in high school and by all these guys that they made you who you are. And I'm like 110%. If I didn't have those beatings or those guys who like embolize their style of wrestling, I wouldn't be where I am today. And then later on in my career, I always loved how Travell Delegna wrestled as a kid. And I remember he'd come to Canada and sometimes wrestle, and I'd sit beside his mat and videotape, like with the old school videos, the video recorders we used to have, right? Like the tape ones. So then I used to sit beside his mat and record them. And then fast forward, I don't know, 2019, he calls me one random morning, invites me down to Ohio State. And so then I came down here, and he was my coach for the last quad. And now I have Logan Stieber, who's been my coach.
Yeah, technical difficulties there. I apologize. We're back, though. We're back. And again, you were just talking about your coach, Logan.
Yeah. So after Travell took a job in Nebraska for their program out there, and then Logan was always my coach as well, just Travell and Logan. And then me and Logan have been together for the last, I don't know, 4 or 5 years now, 4 years or so. So yeah, we have a lot of fun on trips, and it's a very relaxed feel. And yeah, he knows me well, so it's been fun with him.
Nice. I had no idea that you were down in the States still until I just started doing research on on who you were and what you've been doing. And I love the fact that you are down there, because I know that your training is in the right spot. I know that again, like I said, when I said the Olympic trials, and I knew that we got this NC2A placer up against a Canadian guy. I'm pretty sure we're going to see some different. So, and it's too bad that it is that way. But again, I mean, the way, and I think that's what we were talking about, the way the Americans train down in the US, it's a different level. It really is. But the coaching, and again, is again, you said paid, right? It is. I mean, I coached at York University. Do you know how much I got paid? Zero.
Oh, really?
I was a coach there, so there was no incentive to actually show up to practice. There was no incentive to actually invest in my wrestlers. I did, but there was nothing keeping me there. There was nothing really investing in it. I think if we did have that, and I'm sure you would agree, the retention would be a lot.
110%. I agree with that. Like it's not like like back in the day, like I know things were expensive and stuff, but the way that Canada's been the last few years and financially, like it's really hard to volunteer your time towards something that needs 100% of it. So I mean, like a coach's job is 100% in and out. Like that's his whole job is for his athletes. And if you're not getting compensated and you can't feed your family at home, like how could you show up to work and put everything that you have into that? So that's one system that Canada fails in, that's for sure.
Yeah.
Sadly.
And I'm not even sure how they're going to fix that, because that's I mean, you need the funding isn't there. I think one of the things is you have to popularize the sport, and I don't think, and this is my critique to, because I've been there in the university level and seen the wrestling, we don't do dual meets, and you can speak to this, because down in Oregon, the dual meets, they had a lot of people coming out to watch. I mean, at Fresno State, we had thousands of people showing up. At Eastern Michigan, same thing. Michigan is their dual meets are in their basketball arena. I mean, we have that going on. The thing I think with the dual meets is we've lost it here. We just show up. We have tournaments at the university level.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is we don't bring in spectators. And when you don't
Yeah.
bring in spectators, you don't bring in fan bases, because it's in a tournament, it's so hard to watch an individual and cheer for them, because you're sitting around all day waiting for your one guy to
Yeah.
wrestle. You don't care about his teammates, because they're all over as well. Maybe you do, but it's hard to kind of keep track. With a dual meet, the format, maybe you can tell us about the format. I've done enough talking, but tell us about the format so that people can get a better understanding what is
Yeah.
different between Canadian tournaments and US dual meets.
Well, I think the biggest thing it's entertainment. At the end of the day, we're not. I wouldn't say we're entertainers, but we are a little bit. Like we want to put on a show for the people watching.
Mhm.
So I mean, dual meet, it just creates a rivalry between two teams, head to head with 10 weight classes, and you got your fans on one side for one team, you got your fans on the other team, and that's entertainment literally right there. And how you promote it and how you put on the show with the lights and the raised mat and the chairs, the athletes sitting beside each other. Like that's just it's all a show, but it brings people in to watch.
Mhm.
Like we've like in the US, they've done like 40,000, 50,000 fans. Like I know Oregon State, like we didn't have that, but we had the thousands. We did in the thousands for sure. I've been here at Ohio State for the last 4 or 5 years, and I've seen some amazing dual meets. Like it's crazy, and I've been a part of them. Like I've like out just from being a spectator on them. It's a lot of fun when you actually promote it like that and people understand wrestling. But when Canada, when you don't promote wrestling or media's not the greatest on it, we're not really highlighted much. I remember just a few weeks ago, I was laying in bed on Instagram and I saw a CBC put on a clip of all like Canadian athletes in sports, and wrestling wasn't a part of it. And I wanted to post at the bottom of it just because I know that we have Olympic hopefuls, like we have medal hopefuls here, and
Mhm.
we are actually really good. Like Justina, Anna, myself, Alex, Hannah, like we will all do really really well at the Olympics. But I mean, to promote a sport, like we need some backbone, some support from the other sides, right? So
Well, that's why I do this, is because I
yeah,
want
that
sport to progress. And here's the thing: like if we're doing a podcast like this, we're putting an emphasis on our athletes, but we need support from our organizations like Canada Wrestling, Ontario, BC, whatever it is. They should be sharing and profiling athletes in their area as well. I mean, I'm doing it for them, but I would
yeah,
love to see the partnership and getting your guys' names out there, because it is failing. The Canadian media is failing you guys, and not putting you front and center where you should be, because it'll be one. If we do that, we're going to get more funding, right?
yeah,
Because people will
exactly.
know it's the squeaky wheel gets the oil. There's that
Yeah,
saying is popular for a reason.
yeah. No, that is very true. I know I've talked to our guys back home in BC quite a bit, and I've always said this: like we've had amazing wrestlers in Canada, like yourself, like your father, like that stuff's like who's the last three-time Olympian? Like we don't hear that anymore. That's not around. Maybe
Mhm.
Heisling Garcia was the last one to do that in the past generation, decade or so. But like I said that back home, when I was like, where we really feel like fail at is we don't keep our athletes involved after they're retired in the sport. Like I
Yeah.
know that we have a lot of Olympians back home who are great wrestlers, and none of them are acknowledged. And I remember going to BC Wrestling, and I was like, hey, like not just I'm not speaking just for myself, but like all I want is an invite. Like I'll do a camp. I'll do the camp for free. Like,
Mhm.
I'm not even charge you guys. I live in BC. Like I want to help. Like get me involved somehow. And I'm like I can guarantee you that's how other past Olympians or past wrestlers in our lower mainland feel the same. Just feel a little bit of appreciation, right? We've done 20 years for the sport. At the end we don't get any money, we don't get a check, but we would like to get called out a few times for
Mhm.
something, right? Just give back. But I'll always be involved in wrestling just through my club and stuff. So I always try to promote it as much as I can. But that's what I speak. I try to speak on other athletes just because if those athletes stay involved in the sport, like our wrestling would grow in our country. But sadly, we
And,
just
and giving them the acknowledgement. I mean, I think that's a big thing. We did that when I held a tournament at York University. I had all the Olympians that were actually at our tournament line up across the mat so we could take a picture.
yeah
I don't think that's ever been done at a tournament, but because of, for me, I noticed that, recognition. Watching my dad walk around these tournaments, there was no recognition like who he
Yeah.
was. He didn't really care. He was very humble, but he would walk around and he was a big man, right? He was
Yeah.
like 6'5". He had the hands that still. When he spanked me, they were like plates. Um, but I mean, no real like I guess fandom, no appreciation. When he went down, and I heard this story after he passed away. It was a guy named I think it was Guy Zink, who was the Ontario Wrestling Association president at the time. He said, "You know what? We went down to Michigan for the NC2A championships, and when we were down there, here we run into your dad, just in the concourse." And he ended up getting us free tickets, really great tickets. We felt like royalty. He goes, but the one thing I did notice, and this was the last time I saw him before he passed, that's what he said. He goes, I did notice that, he was like a celebrity. People were coming up to him. The Oklahoma State fans were coming up to him, getting pictures, saying hello. And he goes, he just wasn't, the respect that he was getting in the U.S. was so much more. He was an icon in the sport of wrestling down there, more so than he was up in his home country of Canada. And that, I think we need to do a better job at promoting Canadian athletes. And that doesn't matter what sport. I think, when you win a gold medal, yeah, we're not gonna put you on a cereal box. Come
Yeah.
on.
It's true.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I think we have to do a better job of promoting the sport. You just said that you do free camps, you would do these things
Yeah.
to promote the sport. I wrote a book about my father in wrestling, and I'll tell you this. So I was in chapters doing these book signings, hundreds of people coming out to buy the book, especially in his hometown. But I had no from our provincial or national. It would have been nice to have them there to kind of help promote the book, because what you're doing is you're drawing in other people from other domains to say and exposing them to wrestling.
Yeah.
Maybe they're not getting, maybe they will try the sport, maybe they'll just watch the sport, they'll get involved, they'll get more knowledge about it. But that's what we need to do. You have to think about those things about marketing the sport a little better. And I'm just, I'm venting a little bit with you. I'm sorry. I don't want to
No,
drag you into that.
I've bet for the same stuff. Always.
Yeah. But let's go back to your coaches. You've got these high profile coaches. They get paid some great money to be there for you. What's the most important role of the coach for you?
Yeah, for me, I really noticed a difference where like you actually feel cared for outside of the sport. Like wrestling and all, like they coach like technique and the tough practices, and they're there in our ear mentally, and that's all great. But just feeling like loved outside of the sport. Like if I quit tomorrow, my coach isn't gonna call me the next day. Like we have a relationship built where I would talk to him for the rest of my life. I feel like I hate like bashing on our system in Canada, but it's so hard. It's so hard not to, just because like I know that we have amazing coaches. Don't get me wrong, like amazing people that we have, but like the difference of just feeling cared for outside of the sport, I think that's what really gets me.
Mhm.
Like it's more of a friendship. It's not it's more of a friendship role in our sense where I feel comfortable telling them anything or how I feel and how my body's feeling, that sort of stuff. Like that's when you feel really comfortable around a coach. And like the other athletes would tell you, like at worlds and these big tournaments, like me and my coach joke around before I step on the mat. Like I'm not straight faced, like that sort of mode. I'm relaxed, having fun, like I'm having a good time, just because I realize the sport's too hard not to try to have fun with it.
Mhm.
If you're staying super serious the whole time, like for me personally, I would be burnt out. I couldn't do it. So I mean, smiling, laughing is a necessity, I think, in our sport for some people, and that's who I am. But in that sense, like coaches wise, that's what I realized. Like just being known that, hey, like you're a great person, love you on the mat and off the mat. That's what I think it comes down to at the end of the day for coaching, for me, honestly.